Alright guys, thanks for joining me today on another episode of Adventures in CNC. Today it's all about doing a router bowl on a CNC. And boy did I learn a lot. This is the first time I've done a router bowl on a CNC. It's a project I've been wanting to do for a while now. I've done them before by hand and they've turned out really well, and I thought that designing one and doing one on a CNC would be a really cool project. And I learned a lot. This one took all day to complete, and it was kind of a frustrating project, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into it. Alright, so what I'm doing here is I'm just checking the blank against alignment and just making sure that everything is going to work out right. I just run the first toolpath around real quick with Z disabled so the bit doesn't move up and down, and I just make sure that the project's going to fit inside of the blank. Sometimes things get a little bit wonky with this version of Mach 3 and the machine that I have. I had to make a little bit of adjustment, no big deal. Here's another problem with Mach 3. It likes to do ghost drills. You start the G code and it does something really weird. Sometimes it just drills a shallow hole, sometimes it drills all the way through the workpiece. This time I kind of lucked out. As you can see, it's something wrong with Mach 3 and doesn't have anything to do with what I'm doing, because this isn't even in the tool path. As you can see, it just passes right on by. It's in a different area altogether. Fortunately, it was just about a 1/4 inch deep, and I can just cap that off with a dowel. Yeah, it might look a little bit weird. If I use black walnut or something, it might wind up looking like a knot. It might look intentional. Bunch of different ways you can do it. You can fill it in with epoxy or just sawdust and super glue, but I'm going to use a dowel since it is a 1/4 inch hole. I can just cap it off real quick and easy. This is not ideal to do on a CNC. Very time consuming. Just cutting out a big square, there's no point in it on a CNC. A CNC is designed for complex shapes, not simple squares. It probably took 20 minutes to do on the CNC. It can take 4 or 5 minutes to do by hand. You just cut it out on the chop saw and then put roundovers and stuff on it. Real simple to do by hand. Definitely the way to do it. Don't do it on the CNC. So one of the major design flaws in this one was just having a big open bowl area, and then having the CNC just route the whole thing out, especially with a 1/4 inch bit. I should have kind of thought about that a little bit first and used a much larger bit, a 3/4 inch bit, obviously 3 times as large. It would have taken just a third of as many passes, so it would have been much quicker. But truthfully, a big open bowl like this is not really for the CNC. Doing it by hand, hogging it out with a drill press, doing it that way, and then cleaning it up with the router is the best way to do it. I really need to work on getting dust collection built for my CNC. As you can see, wood chips and sawdust just flying everywhere. It was real mess when I was done with this. Building a box would also contain some of the sawdust, but it's just all over my work area. It's crazy. So here I have to change out the bit from the standard 1/4 inch bit over to a bullnose bit. It's just got a round end on it. The version of Mach 3 I have and the software that I use doesn't support bit change natively. It'd be a lot easier if it did, because then you just it would automatically slide over to where you could change out the bit and then it would go back to 0. Of course, I have to do this manually, so you kind of have to be careful of what you're doing. Make sure you don't get any of the axes out of whack or anything. I had something wrong with the adapter collet for the bit that I was using. It just kept dropping out the bottom of the collet every time I moved it back into the workpiece. Did it several times, kind of frustrating. Should have stopped at this point and just finished the bowl up by hand, because I was already several hours into it at this point, and I wasted about an hour messing around with this thing. It was pretty frustrating. When I finally got the bit with what I thought was tight enough, it actually just kept wound up, getting pushed further into the collet. As you can see here, it looks like the shaft of the bit's getting shorter, but it's just getting pushed into the collet. It's removing a little bit of material, but not enough. And as it goes to the second circle, it doesn't make contact at all. It only goes goes not quite halfway down with the passes that it needs to do to clean that out. So kind of frustrating there. I did wind up putting some stop collets and some bearings on there to keep from getting pushed further into the collet. That kind of worked, but it caused some bit chatter and things like that. So there's some burn spots in different places on the bowl. Alright, so here I am just finishing up on the router table like I probably should have done a lot sooner. This is the least complicated way to do it. The next one is definitely going to have a much more complicated design, and I will just template it out, I guess is what you could say, rough it in, whatever you want to call it, but I'll show you guys how to do that. It's just the way that makes sense. Alright, thanks for checking this video out. If you could, like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next adventure in CNC.